First, let's open this method class, math utils, and it has these methods. Okay, so these are the methods I want to test it. So basically, what I'll do, I'll call math utils dot add numbers, and I'll pass 4 or 5. Okay, and I'll execute it. So I'll get the result. So integer result is equal to this, and I'll say system.debug result. Let's execute it. We are expecting, what do we expect? We are expecting output to be 9. And then go to test, 9, not test, logs. And then check, the output is 9. But we can test it also without going to the logs, right? So instead of doing this, I'll say system.assert. So what is the expected and what is the result, right? Expected answer is 9 and result. Okay, so this is what I am expecting, and this is what is coming from this method, right? Let's execute it. Assert equals. Yeah, I have to use something called assert equals. Okay. So there is assert also, but that doesn't take 2 parameters. So I'll show that also. Okay, assert equals. So this succeeded actually. So there are no issues. Assert passed. So let us change it. So I'll say I'm expecting, let's say 11. For whatever reason, I'm expecting 11. Okay. So let's execute. Says it failed, right? Assertion expected is 11. Actual result is 9, right? So that is how we verify if the result is correct or not, right? So our expected answer is wrong. So that's why it is throwing error. If I give proper expected answer, then it will succeed. So this is how you programmatically test if the result is correct or not, right? So you can also use the system.assert. It basically says 9 is equal to result. So if this is going to be true or not, so assert will check if this is true or not. We are expecting 9, and what is the result? So are they matching, right? So this is another way of writing assert. So if I don't give a proper answer, so it will throw error. Assertion failed. Right? This is basically verifying what is the expected answer and what is the output. Okay. Anybody having questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, so this is one test we have written. Second test we will write. We have not yet written test methods. Okay, test classes. I'm just testing here only. Check order even. And I'm going to pass some, say 28. Okay. And sorry, not like that. And we are expecting string output, string, let's say odd even equal to this. And I'll say system dot assert equals. So what we are expecting now, this should be even, right? Comma this. Similarly, we can write one more. D1, 2, and I'm going to pass, let's say 29. And the expected result in this case is odd, right? So let's execute all of them. So assertion failed, right? Expected even,
Okay,
actual expected even.
even.
Okay, I wrote it wrong. So this should be even. Yeah. Execute. Assertion failed. Expected odd, but got even. We expected odd here. Okay, I didn't change it to even odd 2, right? Like odd even 2. Yeah. So those are actually good things. Those errors happened. It basically shows us like if expected answer is not matching the result, then it will fail. Everybody understood so far?
Yes.
Now, this I am running it in my execute anonymous window, right? I go here, I open execute anonymous window and then do it. But the better way to do it is we have to write test classes. Okay. So let's say Control Shift P, not Control Shift P here. I'll just write it here. You can write it from VS Code also. So I want to create a new class and I'm going to create a test class. So generally the naming convention is whatever is the class name and then you append test to it, right? File new test. So math utils test. So that is my test class. Okay. Cool. So I'll save it. So right now I have saved it as a regular class, right? Only it has a test as name in the name, but this is not considered test class yet. So to consider it as a test class, you have to say @is test. And you just notice, so there are no buttons here, right? There is one button called go to, but there is no other buttons here. So I'll save this. Can you see there is one button appearing now called run test? Yeah. So whenever you add this, this is identified as a test class. So that's why it gives me option to run test. So now I want to execute these tests. Okay, exactly what we did here. I want to run it here, right? So first thing is we want to create a method. So let's call it @is_test. So even for test methods, you will have to write like this @is_test, and then static void. So all test methods are static all the time. Test. What do I want to test? I want to test this add two numbers functionality, right? Test add two numbers. Okay, this is my method. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to do this. So whatever I have written here, I'm going to copy and paste here. I generally don't do this. I showed it only for the sake of explanation, but generally we go directly write test methods like this. Okay. Cool. So let's execute run test. So once you run test, you can see like a test result is created here. Test ran and there were no errors, right? And what did test actually, right? If you go to this class, and if you select a math utils test, executed this method, and it tested this part of the code, only the blue part of the code. We have not tested the red one set, right? So whatever test method we executed right now, it tested only this part. So which means this part of the code is covered by test method. Okay, so that is what test coverage is. So right now it is saying the coverage is 15%, right? So overall coverage is also from all tests, this class is covered 15%. So this is 15% of all the code, right? All the code that is there in this class. Okay. Now let's include more tests. Okay. Go to the is test static void. I want to test this one, right? Check odd1. I'll take it from here again. So all that I am doing is calling the method, right? From that math utils class. Just a second, somebody is joining. Yeah. So I'm just calling the method by passing the input, and whatever is the output, I'm verifying. So that's all test classes is, right? It's quite simple. So let's save this and run test. So now if you notice, there are two test methods that ran, check odd1 and test two numbers, and both of them passed. There are no errors, like all green ticks. And now if you go here and see all test, so this part of the code is covered and this part of the code is covered because we only checked for even number, right? So only we passed 28 and only even part of the code is covered, right? From this check odd1, only even is covered, else is not covered yet, right? So let's cover that as well. So let me create one more test method. Let's call it odd1 2. You can name it anything you want. Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. I'm going to pass 29 and I'll expect odd here, right? Run test. So everything passed. Three test methods that executed. And if you see the code coverage now, 46% of the code is covered, right? So this method is covered completely. This method is covered completely, right? And this method we have not covered it. And we can also see individually, individual test method, how much it is covering. So this check odd1 is only covering this part, right? Then this test add two numbers is only covering this part of the code, right? And then check odd1, this one is covering only this part of the code. It is not covering this part, right? But total all together, they're covering all of these things, and which is 46%, right? So we care about when we check about the code coverage, we check for total code coverage, right? Total code coverage has to be greater than 75%, right? But when we are just testing for the functionality, we test for each method individually. We have to make sure that everything is working fine. Okay. So this is how we write test classes and test methods. Yeah. So one thing I have not done here is I have not indicated where my test is starting. Let's suppose here I am going to create some things. Okay. Integer a is equal to 5. Integer b is equal to say some 20. And then I'm calling this method. I'm getting the result and I'm going to assert it. Okay. So 25 is the result. Okay. So let's save it once. Run it. And it failed. Okay. So what failed? Check failed, and what happened? Expected 25, actual is 9. Okay. Swear.
You passed the parameter 4,
I didn't pass A and B, correct. Run test. Yeah, now it failed. Now it passed. Okay. So now I have a question. So where exactly is my test starting? Is it starting here? My test?
No.
No, right? This
When
is
we
I'm
pass
preparing test data here, right? So which line it is starting? Test.
Line number 8.
line number 8.
Line number 8.
Yes. So my test actually starts at line number 8, right? So I have to tell it because here I might be doing some operations and this could be some DML operation also. So I'm querying some data. Let's say I have some query here just for the sake of explanation. I'm querying for a list of accounts. Okay. List account ACC list is equal to new list of, I mean, select ID name from account. Okay. So suppose there is this query. Now, if I run the test class, so do I need to consider this circle query as part of my test? No, right? Because my test is only happening here, but this is consuming one circle query, correct? Suppose my test takes some 100 circle queries. What will happen? The overall test will fail because too many circle queries, right? So to avoid that, so I don't want this to be included in the actual governor limits for my test. Okay. So for that, what I'll do, I'll say test dot start test. So I'm just indicating my test is starting here. Okay. So don't consider all of these things in the governor limits for my test alone for the test. So start from here. Okay. So consider like my test is starting here. So reset all governor limits now and execute. Okay. And I'll also say, where is my test stopping? So is this part of my test? So this is my validation, right? I'm validating if my result is correct or not. But my test will end here only, right? I'm only testing for add two numbers method. So my test actually ends here. So I have to indicate this. It's very important because I need to reset governor limits and I want to verify only for this particular operation. Am I going to hit the governor limits or not, right? So if it hits the governor limits, it will tell us, right? It will fail. But if I don't include this, the governor limits might be hit because of other reasons also, not just because of my test. Because there is one circle here, there may be another DML here or whatever, right? So I don't want those to impact my test result. So that's why I'm resetting the governor limits here and then I'll execute.
Sir,
And
testing the SOQL query is not necessary if in this case.
no, circle query is part of preparing the test data. It is not for
Okay.
actual execution of the test. So
Okay.
in this method, what we are doing is we are actually testing only for this method, add two numbers.
Okay.
So that's why we are resetting everything here. So data will be there, but it will not consider in the governor limits. This circle query is not considered in the governor limits. So let's execute it now. Yeah, it still works. Everything is fine. So this is how you have to write your test method. So you have to say where your test is starting and where it is ending. So before you start the test, you prepare the data and then you execute the test. And then after the test is executed, you assert or verify the results. Okay. Is this making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you have to put this everywhere. Test start test and stop test. Yeah, this example is very simple. That's why you will not see the impact of how this test test start test stop test are useful. When you actually write, say there is a trigger there which is using some so-called some DML. There is a huge functionality where you are doing a lot of so-called statements. So then you will realize that how this is useful, right? So let's yeah. Now another thing is, if you look at it, we are only covering the positive outcomes, right? So in this case, we are passing 28 and we are expecting the result to be E1, right? We are only testing for that, right? So we have to also test for negative scenarios, right? So for that, we'll be writing something like this. Okay. So I'm passing 28, but I have to make sure this is not even, right? Not odd. So I have to say odd. This one. So the result is not odd, right? This is the negative, like other way around of testing, right? Here we are expecting output to be even. Here we are expecting output to be not odd, right? So run this. Yeah, it still works. Okay. So we have to test like that also for even for this add, right? Not this, for this add two numbers. I have to test like let's say 2. I don't want this. The result we are expecting is 25, but I'll also say, I can also write like this, not equals 26, right? Result we are expecting is 26, but it should not be equal to 26. Okay. So everybody understood what we are doing?
Yes, sir. Or, sir, we have to write only one test case inside a method.
Yes, every method will test only one thing. You can do multiple, but that is not recommended. So every test method has to test a single functionality. And we can actually, there will be multiple test methods testing the same functionality, right? So what we are saying, to test one functionality, you can write multiple test methods, but you should not write one test method to test multiple functionality. Is that
Okay.
making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for just for add two numbers, I can write like 10 tests if I want to. There can be 10 test methods just testing for this add two numbers. But it should not be the case like this one method is testing add two numbers also. It is also testing check odd even. So that is not recommended because it will become very difficult to assert, right? Validate what is the outcome. If you are running too many too many tests inside one test method. And that's why it is actually called unit test. Unit test is we are performing test at the level of single methods. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's good to have multiple test methods for same Apex method. For the same math.util, math utils are add number. I have 1, 2, there can be 3, 4, 10. It doesn't matter. So more test methods better. Okay, cool. So let's continue. So we have this method now. So just help me out. What should I do? Okay. So I want to check if this is working. So this is calculating a power b, and it throws error if we pass 0, right? B is less than 0, it will throw error. And then if everything is fine, then it will return the result. Okay. So just help me what I should do.
Method static void check power.
Yeah. Static void. We are testing for this. Calculate a power b. Test. Yeah. Now tell me what should be.
Start test.
Test start test.
Stop test.
Yeah. Okay. So then we will be calling this method from math utils. I'm going to call check calculate a power b. So it's take a decimal, let's say 5, and b is let's say 4. Okay. Yeah. Next, what should we do?
Should assign it to some variable.
Yeah. So collect the output decimal result. Let's say let's call result this, and then system dot assert equals. What are we expecting? What is 5 power 4? 25, 125, 125 power 125 into 5. What is it? Let's keep it to 3. Okay. 125. And this, yeah. So let's execute this. So tests passed, so there are no issues. And let's see here, coverage. I want to see how much of code this is covering. Calculate a power b test, right? So you can see like it covered all things, but it did not go into if, right? Because b is greater than 0. In our case, what is the value of b? B is 3. So therefore, it did not go into the if block. Rest everything it covered, right? And this covers like 46% of our code. But overall, if you see now, overall it covers 92% of the code, right? Only one line is not covered. If we cover that also, it will be 100% code coverage, right? So let's go back. Yeah. So let's add that also. Like we want to cover for the other scenario, right? So I'm going to pass this as -3. Let's say this is test 2. Yeah. So what do you expect now?
Through exception.
Yeah.
Successful
Throw
and
exception.
successful.
Yeah. Let's run it. See, one of the tests failed here, right? So all of this work, but calculate a power b test failed. So what actually happened is it is throwing an exception, right? Exponent cannot be negative, illegal argument exception. So in such scenarios, what you will do, you will go here and you are expecting, you know what is the expected output, right? So you need to actually get an exception. So you catch this. You'll say try executing this, and make sure you don't use try catch everywhere, right? You use try catch in the test method only if you are expecting the exception, right? So because I am expecting an exception here, that's why I'm going to say try catch. And I can actually verify if the message that we are getting is actually valid or not, right? So in this case, I'm going to get a message, assert equals, what am I expecting? E dot get message. And I'm going to expect here. So this one, exponent cannot be negative. Okay, so let's run this now. See it pass now, right? And yeah, so everything passed, right? So we are getting the right message, like E dot get message, exponent cannot be negative. And we can see here, if I execute this calculate a power b 2, right? So it is only covering this part, if part. It is not doing anything else, right? So if b is 0, then it will throw error. And we are catching that exception and validating if the exception that we are getting is the right exception, right? It should not be like divide by 0, right? If I say here divide by 0, this is wrong, right? I'm expecting this error. Exponent cannot be negative, but here I'm validating for divide by 0. See, it failed. So it says the assertion failed. Expected is divided by 0, but actual we got is exponent cannot be negative, right? So it should be proper validation. Run it. So everything is working. So there are no issues. And now if you see what is the overall code coverage, 100%. So this 100% is the cumulative code coverage of all test methods, right? So each test method is covering a part of the code, and overall it is covering everything. So this is covering only this much. The other test method is covering only this, right? So check RD1 is covering only this much. So overall, everything together are covering this code 100%. Okay. Any questions? Any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. So now let's actually take this is just a sample, right? Math utils. Let's actually take a right scenario. Let's say I want to use this account helper. Okay, I'll create one class. This is my class. Okay. So this code is not bulkified, but I just want to show how to write test for this. Okay. So this method is creating one account. This method is what it is doing. It is updating account. It is taking ID and name. And then this is basically count the number by name, right? It is basically giving me number of accounts matching this name. Okay. Very simple code, just for the sake of demo. Okay. This is not how we should be writing code. So I want to test it. So let's start. I will create a new Apex class. The name should be account helper test. So we just append test to the name. Okay. So let's start by testing this one. So what this method is doing? So this method is creating one account, right? So how do I test this one? Anybody? How to test this?
Like writing more class for test class and then write a method, test method, pass name into it.
Yeah. So basically, we just need to understand what this is doing, right? What this method is doing, it is taking one string as input, and then it is going to create an account, like it will insert account and then return that account data, right? So this is what it is doing. So what we are expecting, we will pass one string to this and it will return me the account data. And how do we verify it is inserted? it will have an ID, right? At the end of insert, it will create an ID and we can verify with that. Okay. So let's try. I'm going to say, first thing I have to mark this as @is_test. Now the button will appear here. Yeah. So now let's start a test method @is_test void static void. We have to say static void. I want to test this create account test. Then I'm going to call this method. So account helper dot create account, and I'm going to pass a name. Let's return here. And then I need to include test.start test. I'm saying this is where my test is starting, and this is where my test is ending. Right. And this method is going to return me the account after inserting, right? So I'm going to collect account result is equal to this, and then I'll verify system.assert equals or
But
not
this
equal.
methods don't save into the database, right? Actually, don't commit any data to the database.
Yeah, this only creates temporary data. So
Okay.
nothing after the test is completed, it will roll back all data. Okay, test will not commit any data to database. Okay, so assert not equals is a null. I'm not expecting null for result.id. So this account that is inserted should have an ID, right? Or I can say system.assert result.id is not equal to null. Both are same. Okay, no difference. Some problem happened. System. Okay. Yeah. So let's run it. Let's see, it phase succeeded. Yeah, so there are no errors. So create account test executed, and if you go here and see code coverage, like this part of the code is covered, right? This method is completely covered now, right? Let's suppose I want to test a negative scenario, let's say, but I cannot, I have to pass a string here, right? So it is not here. Yeah, let's say I will pass a blank string and let's see what happens. I'm just trying it out. It failed, right? So it basically says name should be minimum 5 characters. So that's the error we got. So we need to validate this also, these kind of scenarios. What happens if I don't pass the data, right? If I pass invalid data, so on. So let's go back here. Let's continue. Yeah. So we tested one method, right? And we asserted. So we followed everything. So we started test, we executed the functionality, and we are asserting it. We validated it. So now let's do for this one. This will be a little interesting, right? So let's understand this. What it is doing, it is taking one account ID and it is taking name, and then it is updating the name, right? It is querying for the name like account using this ID and then updating this one. So this is the functionality. Okay, it is doing one SQL query and one DML statement, right? Now we need to pass an ID, right? So let's understand that first. So I want to write a test. So let's create this. I'm going to create this, not this one. I'm going to test this method, right? Update account name. Update account name test. So this is what I'm going to do. So let's say I will say start test and then stop test. And then I'm going to say, so this is returning nothing. This is returning void. So I'm going to just say account helper dot update account name. And I'm going to pass two things, but this is expecting an ID, right? This is expecting account ID. Where do you get this account ID from? Where should I get this account ID from? So to update the record has to be in the database, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the record has to be in the database. So before we actually execute the test, the data has to be inserted in the database, correct? And then we will update that account. So that how we will do, now we'll understand. So we are going to pass ID and we are going to pass some name, updated name. But I don't know what this ID is right now, right? So how do I get this ID? So that is basically where we will be using at the test setup, okay? So we should create one method here, which is annotated with @test setup, and it will be basically static void, just like other test methods. You can name anything. I generally prefer writing it setup data, right? This is my method. So here I can insert one account and it will temporarily insert into the database, and I'll show you what happens. Okay. So let's say this is my account that I'm inserting. So I'm inserting this account with name is test account. I've inserted it. Okay. So now I want to use this account. I want to update this account only. So what we will do here, we'll go in our test method in this, and I'll say account ACC is equal to select ID, so a name from account, where name is equal to test account. Okay. And then now I'm going to pass this ID here, acc.id. So I'm saying update this particular account, the account I created here in the setup. So this will get inserted into the DB temporarily for the duration of this test method or test class. Basically, as long as this test class is executing, this data will be inserted in the database. Then I can query the data and I'll basically update it, right? I will update the name. So now how I will assert, let's see. So assert one, I'm going to do like this, system.assert. Before test, right? Before actually executing the test, I'm saying the name, ACC date name is this. I'm asserting before. Sometimes we do that. Before doing the operation, we assert. And then after that also we'll assert, okay? So here I'm asserting if name is equal to test name. And then here, after the test is executed, I'm going to do again. So here I'm expecting the name should be updated name. And I'm going to say select ID from a name from account where ID is equal to acc.id. So this is this ACC, whatever account we are updating, dot name. Okay. So this is going to return me one account record, and I'm checking if that name is matching this updated name or not. Okay. Cool. What it is saying, incorrect assert. Okay, assert equals. Yeah. So let's understand this. Okay, what we are doing. So first, before the test is executed, we are inserting one account, and then we are querying that account, and I'm querying just to get the name. Okay, I mean just to get the ID, because I want ID to be passed here, right? It needs ID and the new name. So I need ID. So I'm getting the ID here, and then I'm giving updated name. And then after test, I'm checking if the name is actually got updated in the database or not, right? So that I'm again querying, right? And then before execution also, I'm making sure, like just to confirm, like this is test account. And then this same, I'm checking again, name is updated or not. This before execution, this is the name. After execution, this is the name. Okay. So is this making sense to everybody?
Sir, will the data will be present till the execution of the whole test method? And that's
Yes.
setup test.
So whatever test setup we are doing, it will be present as long as any of the test method is executing inside this class. Whatever methods we have inside this, it will be present for every method.
Okay. Like, can we return the ID from there?
No, it's just
We should
creating
not.
data. No, we should not
Okay.
return. We should
Okay.
again do this. And you can see now how this is helpful, right? So I'm
Yeah.
writing some SOQL query here. I'm writing some SOQL query at the end, but my test is happening only here. So therefore, we are saying only reset governor limit for this area, right? Don't consider this SOQL and this SOQL for my test. Also, there is a DML happening here. Don't consider inside the test. So only how much governor limits this is going to consume, that I am worried about, right?
Okay.
So if this takes more than like 100 SOQL queries, then it will fail here. So this will not be counted inside the governor limits. Okay. So let's run this. Yeah, seems like everything passed, right? Yeah, both methods passed. Create account test, update account name passed, right? And let's see the coverage. Total is 80% covered. And if we just take a look at this update account, it covered this one, right? It covered entire this method. And we have asserted also. So we have done everything. So we queried a account from database, then we updated the name, and then we asserted to make sure that it is actually updated. Okay. Anybody having any questions?
So can we pass directly record account ID here?
Here?
Yes, sir.
But which account ID will you pass?
Means whatever there in database.
So you can do that. I'll show you, right? But yeah, we'll talk about it. Let's say I'll take one of these accounts. So some demo account is there. I'll take this ID. I'll pass it. Okay. And I'm going to comment this part of the code. And then here also, I'm going to use this. Cool. So this is what you were asking, right? I'll pass one ID from database and then I'll update that, and I'm expecting it to be updated. Run test. So this actually failed. Okay. And let's see why it failed. Update account failed. And it says list has no rows for assignment. It failed in the query. Okay. Line number 26. Okay. So line number 26 is what in the test one? Yeah. So it failed here, right? Let's check again. Update account name. It actually failed line number 12 in the account helper. Okay. So account helper, what it is doing, it is querying data here. Okay. So line number 12 is taking the ID, it is querying data, and it is not returning any data. Why it is not returning any data? Even though the data is there here, why it is not returning?
And their bracket, you have missed. Bracket is not correct in that way. Account helper test.
Account helper test. Here, which bracket is not correct?
Select ID name where
No,
ID is equal. Okay.
this is also fine actually. There is no error. I can execute this. I'll show you. Okay. So let's execute this query in the query editor. See, it returns one account, right?
Yeah, it's correct. I understood.
Yeah. So this is correct. There is no issues with the code. Okay.
Sir, maybe
But-
we can't test with data present in the database.
Yes. So basically, we are trying to use data that is present in the database, right? Which is not a good thing, right? But we can do that as well. Okay. So there is something called here at the rate is test setup C set CR data equal to true. Okay. So what this is saying is now take data that is there in the database. Okay. If I don't include it, it will only check if the data is created during this test, right? Only use that data. But if I say this CR data equal to true, let's deploy this. What is the problem? Cannot be annotated with at the rate CR data equal to true. Why? What the use case is, right? Have they disabled it? I'm not sure. This was allowed before. I'll just see here. We cannot use just CR data equal to true and same class. Okay. Interesting. So what they're saying is we cannot use this now. Let's do it. Yeah. So now I have saved it. CR data equal to true, and let's execute it, right? This is there in the database, this account. So let's run it. This failed again. So let's see what happened. TML exception failed. There are closed one opportunities, so that's why there is some validation error. I'll take a different account. Okay. So let's take this sample account. I'll use this ID. See, now it succeeded, right? So there are no issues. So it succeeded. But do you expect this to be updated in the database, updated name for this account?
No.
No, it
No.
won't update. So it will roll back. It will temporarily update it, but it will roll back, right? The name will not change. But what is the problem with this approach? I'm getting some data from the database and then trying it, like updating it. What is the problem?
Every time you have to pass the ID.
It's not dynamic.
I don't have to
The
pass
IDs.
the ID. Let's say I'll do this. Okay. I'll just say sample account 2. Account 2 and some system data cert. This is sample account 2. And then I'll say ACC data ID and the rest of it is fine. Okay. Let's run it. And this also succeeded, right? No problems. But why we should not do this? What is wrong with this?
Like without records also, we should be able to test it with the dummy data.
Correct.
If we pass the ID, we should data should be present. Without data also, we should be able to test that.
Yeah, correct. So let's imagine this, right? You are developing in your sandbox and you have this account named sample account 2. Do you expect this account to be present in your production? When you deploy this code, in production, it will run the test classes, right? And it will query for this account, sample account 2. Do you expect this account to be there in production arc?
No.
Like real data will not be like this, sample data 2, right? Even if you create it like a real data, edge communications, but do you expect edge communication to be there in your production arc? No, right? And like we discussed in the last session, like at high level, I touched upon it. So basically, we have developer sandbox, then there is a QA sandbox, then there is a UAT sandbox, and there is production, right? There are different systems through which this code will pass through. Do we expect this account to be present in every org, in developer org also, in QA org also, in UAT org, and then in production org?
No.
No.
No, right? We cannot have that scenario. So that's why we are saying create data here itself. Do not depend on existing data from the database. That could go wrong. Like when you are deploying it to a new org, nothing will be there in that, right? No data will be there. So how do you execute the test then, right? So that's why this is not the recommended approach. Even though you can do it, right? If you are 100% sure that will be sample account 2, then do it. But that will not be the case, right? So that's why we are going to create test data here itself. And we are going to set CR data equal to false. We should not set CR data equal to true. Default is CR data equal to false. That's why you don't include it also fine. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So is that making sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So anybody having any questions on this test method? So let's run it again and let's see what is the code coverage. So it ran successfully. The code coverage for this is some 80%, right? There is one more method which is left. So which is basically going to return me something. So it will take a name and return the number of accounts, right? So let's write one for this. At the rate is test static void. And I'm going to say count name test. And then I'll say this is going to return an integer. Okay. Test start test integer count is equal to this account helper dot, and I'll say test name.
Sir, in case of regression testing, do we need to test with the database existing record, or again we have to create there also dummy?
So you should never test it with existing data. You should always create test data
Okay.
because we don't know if the data will be present or not in production. Okay, so basically we are expecting some count, and then I'll assert some dot assert equals. So what is the expected count here? For test account, how many accounts will be there by the name test account?
Only one.
Only one, right? We are just inserting one account. So we are expecting one account and then count, verify with count. And let's create one more test method also, just for the sake of this. I'm going to say test account 2, let's say, and I'm expecting 0, right? So there is no test account 2, or even if I pass sample account 2, right? So let's say sample account 2. How many sample account 2 will be there?
One.
One.
Zero.
Are we creating that sample account 2 here?
No, sir.
No.
So it will not be there in this context, right? In this trigger context, like test context, it will not be there. It is there in the database, but we are not creating the test data. So therefore, and CL data is by default false. So therefore, this should result in 0, right? Okay, let's run it. Yeah, succeeded. Everything is working. Count, everything is working, right? So which is correct. So let's see the coverage now. 100% code covered, right? Each method is covering part of the code. The whole thing is covered by the cumulative, cumulative of all the methods, test methods. Okay. Everybody understood why this is resulting in 0?
Yes, sir.
There's no sample account.
Yeah. So we have not created the sample to account inside our test data. It is there in the database, but that is not going to be used. Cool. So this is how we write test classes for an Apex class, right? Now let's see how to write test classes for triggers. Okay. So I'll create a sample trigger now, and then we'll have account trigger. I'm just going to override this code with some code I have written. Yeah. So what this is doing, this has a few things. So is before is insert, it is going to update industry as technology if it is null, right? And then before update, we want to prevent setting negative value to annual revenue. And then after insert, we are creating some task, right? We are inserting a task. Okay. So now I want to test this one. So there are no test methods here, right? In the previous example, there were methods and we are directly calling the method, right? So let's see that before we move. Open. So classes. Yeah, account helper test. So what we are doing here, we are directly calling account helper dot create account, right? Account helper dot update account helper dot count something. So this is fine because our class account helper had only methods to test. But here, how do we test? So here there are no methods, right? But we need to test this functionality. So how do we test?
Creating helper class for this trigger.
Okay, creating helper class is also fine, but then there will be some code here also, right? In the trigger. From here, we'll be calling the helper, but I need to test the code inside the trigger as well. So the thing is, we need to notice like when will this trigger execute, right? So when does this trigger execute?
Like before the insertion.
Yes. So this trigger will execute on insert update, right? So we just have to recreate that scenario. Like we insert some data and trigger will automatically execute, right? We don't have to explicitly call account trigger from our test method. I'll just say I'll insert one account and let that insert will trigger this, call this trigger, right? So let's actually see it. Okay. Control Shift P, not Control Shift P. Here I have to do this new class. Okay. Account trigger test. Okay. So again, the name is just appending test to whatever we are testing. So I'm going to mark this as @each test. And here, so first thing is what we are going to expect. On before insert, we are setting industry equal to technology. So I want to test this. So what I'll do, I'll just go here. I'll say static void test industry update, right? So I'm expecting whenever I create an account and if I don't pass the industry, then it has to set to technology, right? So I'm just going to do this and I'll say account ACC is equal to new account and I'll give name. Name is equal to is dummy account. And then I'm going to say insert ACC, right? So when I insert this account, this will automatically call this trigger, right? And this trigger, the logic, whatever logic is there, it will execute based on the trigger context. And then it should update industry, right? So I'm going to start my test here. Test dot start test. So my test is starting here and it will stop here. Test dot stop test. And I need to basically check whether this dummy account actually has industry value or not now, right? I'm going to say system dot assert equals or assert say null or I will say select ID from or ID comma industry. industry from account where name is equal to me, ECC, let's use as equals only, and I'm going to pass technology dot industry. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm creating one account. I have not set any value for the industry field, and I'm expecting this trigger to set the value as technology, right? And I'm asserting for this account itself, is the industry updated as technology or not? Okay, so let's run it. So test executed successfully, which means this assert is passing, right? Which means technology is updated as the industry, right? And let's also see the code coverage. There's 84% code covered. And we can see this part of the code is fully covered. After insert is also covered. We'll test this again, but after insert is also covered. Before update is not covered because we are only inserting the data. Before insert and after insert are covered by just this part of the code. And we are validating, right? Making sure the data is correct. Is this making sense? How this trigger is getting covered?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, instead of
Yeah.
querying in the line of button, you can use that reference of another account ACC.
You can try and use it, but this will. Do you expect this to have industry? Let's see. Because this is there in. So here in this context, is it there? The trigger is updating it, but let's see. I think it would fail because we don't have industry here. It failed. Right? It says assertion failed. Expected technology actually is null. So trigger is going to directly update it in the database, right? So here we are updating, like we are checking locally. This is local, I mean in the RAM. So this ACC is created in the RAM, correct? And trigger is setting it after we, when we execute this, the trigger will update the value, but it is not getting updated in this object.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why we need to query for it. Okay, so let's also write one more test for this same thing. So I'm going to test other scenarios, right? Second scenario is I'm going to pass industry. Okay, industry is equal to energy. Okay, so what do you expect this to have now at this point? What should be the value of industry? So the trigger is going to execute, or trigger is going to update industry only if it is null, correct? If it has a value, it will not set it. So I'm going to check if this is equal to energy here, right? So if I'm already setting a value, then it will not change. If I am not passing a value for industry, then it will change, right? It will change to technology. Run this. So everything is working fine, right? So which means our trigger is doing its work properly, right? So if we don't set the industry value, it is going to update it. If we are setting it, then it will not going to update. Okay. So now let's verify for the other scenario. Like after insert, this is going to create a task, right? So it is creating some task for each account. There is one task that is getting created and inserted. So we want to see if the tasks are getting created. Let's go here and then at the rate is test. Static void visibility task. Verify task creation. Or let's say test task creation. So same thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to change anything. I'll take all of this, but assert will be different, right? So in this case, I need to assert if the task is actually getting created. And what is the condition? So every time account is getting inserted, it's just creating a task, it will insert. Okay. So I'm going to say system.assert. So assert equals. So how many tasks do we expect here when we execute this logic?
One task.
One task.
task.
Correct. So we are expecting one task, and I'll say select count ID from task. Okay, so this will return a number, so which is fine. What is the error? Line number 30. This is returning a list. Count ID is returning a list. Let's do this. Okay, I'm not sure why that is the case. Dot size. Yeah, so I'm querying for the account like task, and I'm checking if this size is equal to 1. Yeah, test. So it passed, right? So, but in this case, I think it will be better to test bulk. So this trigger will execute for bulk scenarios also, right? So we have to test for bulk scenarios. So let's do that. I'm going to create account ACC2 is equal to new count name is equal to dummy count 2. I'm going to create a few more accounts, and I want to make sure it works for bulk scenario also. Yeah, let's do one thing. Instead of doing this, I'll do for loop for integer I is equal to 0, I less than say some 400. I want to create some 400 accounts in my test because I'm testing for bulk scenarios, right? If my code is bulkified or not. A++. Let's create list count list. Say this. Okay, so I'm creating a list of accounts. This will have some 400 accounts, and I'm going to insert that entire list. So how many tasks do we expect now?
400 tasks.
Yes, so there should be 400 tasks. Okay, so let's run it. And let's see. Yeah, so everything is working fine. So there are no test failures, and our code is bulkified. We verified that our code is also bulkified, right? So we have to test all those scenarios. We have to test for single account, for multiple accounts, in every scenario, right? Everybody understood this?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So now let's see what is the code coverage. Code coverage is 84%. So these are covered before insert, like after insert. Let's cover before update. So what it is doing, if we are setting annual revenue less than 0, then it is going to throw an error. Okay, and this is happening before update, right? So if you are saying before update, what is the first step we should do in our test class?
Write a setup test method.
Yes. So we need to create test data, right? Because we are going to update the data. So we have to create the data first. So at the rate test setup, I'll just copy this code here. So creating one account for testing. So I'm setting test name and inserted this. And then I'm going to update this, right? So I'm going to say at the rate is test. Test revenue is not negative, right? And let's do this. And I'm going to update this. So first thing is I'm going to query for this, right? Account ACC is equal to select ID, revenue from, or I don't have to do this, right? But I need ID. So that's why I need this from account where name is equal to test account. Okay. And I'm going to say ACC dot annual revenue is equal to some minus something. And then update ACC. So there are a few things we need to do, but I'm just going to try and execute this and see what happens. Let's say select revenue name from account, no such row revenue. Okay, annual revenue. Yeah. So let's run it. So it failed, right? So what is the failure? Task creation failure or this one? Okay. So one is this negative thing. So what it is saying, annual revenue cannot be negative, right? So that is the error. So in this case, what we should do? We are getting an exception.
Handle that.
Yes. Let's say We are expecting an error in this case, right? So I need to handle that. Test dot start test. Test dot stop test. And then I'm going to wrap this inside try. This is fine. This is not the issue. I'm going to keep it here. And I'm going to update inside try back, try block, and I'll say catch exception E. And whatever is the exception, right? So I'm going to assert equals expected is, it has to throw this message. Then I'm going to say e dot get message. Okay. Run test. Still something is failing. Let's see what is failing. Test revenue is failing. Assertion failed. So the assertion basically says expected is annual revenue cannot be this. Actual is it is throwing message like this, the entire thing. Okay. So it is throwing a long message. I need to only get this one, or I'll just test the part of the message. Okay. Let's go here. Instead of testing for the whole message, I'm going to say assert e dot get message contains this. So I'm just saying if the message contains this error message or not, right? Sorry. Still something is failing. So let's see. Yeah, so that is fine. The task creation one is failing. Okay, what is happening here? Assert failed 400. Actually is 401. Okay, so which is interesting. Let's see, right? So let's go back here. This method is now failing, and it is saying we are expecting 400, but actually it's 401. Why is that happening?
We added a method, no, test setup method. It will get one more record created.
Yes, very nice. So we created one account here also, right? So this will also execute the trigger, and it will also insert one task, right? And here we are inserting 400 records, right? So 401 is what it is expecting. So there is one account created here, and there are 400 accounts created in this method. So that's why. So now let's run it. Okay, now everything worked, succeeded, right? Now let's see the coverage, 100% code covered, right? So we have tested most of the things. So we need to test one more thing. That is what happens if we set the right value, right? Here we are setting negative value, so it will throw an exception. If we set the right value, it should take it, right? So let's write this again. In this case, I'm going to update this to this value, and then I'm just going to update it. I'm not expecting any error in this case, right? I'm going to update it and stop test, and then I'm going to say system dot assert. I'm going to query for this account again, and in this case, annual revenue should be dot annual revenue is equal to this value, right? And I can put an assert before also if I want to. So assert before would be like before update. Here it will be, let's say 0. It will be 0 or null. Let's see. And this is yeah. It failed. I think it is returning null, not 0. So positive failed. Assertion failed. Yeah. So assertion failed. That is because it is returning 0 here. But let's use assert equals. It should be null. Okay. Yeah. Net. done. So everything is fine, working fast. Okay, cool. So now can you see like how this would help, right? So, but before we go there, anybody having questions?
Okay.
So now let's assume this test class is there in production, okay? And somebody was going to work on this trigger. They are modifying this trigger, okay? So they modified this trigger, and for whatever reason, let's say they commented this line. For some reason, they commented this line, okay? And then we are going to deploy this code, okay? We have not tested anything. We are going to deploy this code. So when we deploy this code, this test class will run, okay? So that will happen every time we deploy. Somebody has commented this code, and we are going to run this test class. What do you expect this test class to do? Yeah,
It
what
could
would
not
happen?
find or like empty list will be inserted, or it might be trigger.
Will it pass or will it fail this test? All tests here. Somebody unexpectedly did this, like intentionally or unintentionally commented this line, okay? And we are deploying it, okay? So when we deploy, the test will execute. So I'm doing it manually here, but it will automatically run test when you deploy. So it will run test. Let's see what happens. See, the test is failing, right? So test failed, and it will tell us which test failed. The task creation test is failing, right? Because here it was asserting and expecting some 401, but there is only 0 task that is created. See how we can stop regression, right? Somebody unexpectedly changing the code, it should not break existing functionality. It was working in production, but now somebody commented this, it failed, right? It stops the deployment. It will not allow us to go through this deployment unless somebody goes and fixes this. Making sense how the test classes are helping?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So similarly, suppose somebody went and made some changes, some more changes. Okay. Let's say they changed this one, right? They changed this value instead of small less than, they made it greater than for whatever reason, right? And let's see when we execute, when we want to deploy this code, this is going to run. It failed. And let's see what all failed, right? Task creation failed and any other method failed. Test revenue is positive. So this also failed, right? So what is happening? Test revenue is positive. Here it is actually throwing an error, right? But we are not catching that error. If I had put try catch here, it would have caused problem, right? So that's why I should not put try catch everywhere. You have to put try catch only if you are expecting the error, right? So here I was not expecting the error, but it's throwing the error, which is a good thing, right? Then something is wrong. Everybody understood that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
So be careful when you are writing test classes. Do not put try catch unless you want to catch the exception. Okay. Yeah. So let's go back. So the best practices, I think by now you already know it. So use @istest for both test classes and test methods. @test setup to create test data once and then reuse that data. Use start test and stop test to reset governor limits. Assert, extremely important. Every method should have assert and it should assert the right thing. Okay. What is expected and what is actual. So you have to be very careful with your assert. You have to add asserts. You have to test for both negative and positive scenarios. Also, you have to ensure you are processing bulk data. Like we created some 400 accounts, right? So like that, you have to execute for bulk scenarios. There is one more thing I didn't cover, which I'll just explain it to you, which is system.run as, right? So now all the tests that we have written is executed as system administrator, right? It is executing a system and it has all permission, right? But sometimes we write functionality in such a way that that functionality can be executed by only a certain users, a group of users, right? Say one department will have that functionality, other department will not have that functionality. So in that case, you will use something called system.run as. Okay. So then you will pass run as which user, right? You have to pass a specific user. Run as say sales user, run as say marketing user, something like that. So only for that department it should work, right? So you will figure this out yourselves, right? So this is a to do. And then you have to ensure that your code is covered minimum 75%, but this is not what you should be targeting for. You should always target for 100%, right? So every code that you write, every class, every trigger has to 100% covered, has to be. This is the minimum requirement given by Salesforce, because in some cases we are not able to cover something for whatever reason, then deployment should not be affected. So that's why they have kept it to 75%. But in our case, our target has to be always 100% code coverage. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I think that's it. That's about the test classes.